And so if you want to see the new Texas, look at the faces of our children in Texas. I get asked constantly, what is the single largest issue impacting the Latino community in Texas or in America? And people quickly talk about education, which is a good place to start. Talk about pre-K, talk about college opportunities and access, talk about healthcare. I often say that our single largest problem in the state of Texas is that Latinos are 38% of the population and we don't act like it. And the minute Latinos in Texas start acting like they're 38% of the population, these things sort of take care of themselves. By way of comparison, California is 38% Latino. And look at the outcomes in California. And so the difference between Texas and California is a lot of hard work. And oftentimes when people look at Texas as a place to engage, they often are overwhelmed and don't know where to start because the problems are just enormous. And so when you take a state like Texas that grew by 4.1 million people over the course of a decade, 89% were minority, 65% Latino, 1 million children born or brought to the state of Texas in that decade, 95% Latino. More congressional pickups in America. The last time Texas saw a 4-seat gain was after the Civil War and the years of Reconstruction. What did Texas minorities get in return for that dynamic growth? 0 seats added in Congress, -5 in the state House. So if it wasn't for the Voting Rights Act, if it wasn't for what was Section 5 then and what's left of Section 5 now, now that Section 4 is sort of back in Congress, if it wasn't for the Voting Rights Act, I don't know where Texas would be. So here's where we are today. We are now, it's 2014, we have our 3rd redistricting trial set for July 14th in San Antonio. We have an interim map that actually gave Texas House seats 6 seats. We received the 5 that were taken away from us and an additional Section 2 seat in Houston, Texas. And we received some improvements in the congressional map, but we have not stopped there. We are continuing to really put our best legal strategy in force. I believe that frankly, for 2014, the focus should be at the courthouse. I think we should work hard knocking on doors and getting people to turn out and vote. But you talk about the best return on your investment to get more minorities elected in Texas, it's going to be at that court. It's going to be in that courtroom. And so you look where we are there. The game has changed. You can grow a state by magnificent numbers and not receive any political benefit. And then on the flip side, conservatives, Republicans, they know this data. They know this demography. I'm not making it up. So they have a choice. And their choice is they can work for and with the Latino community or they can work against us. They have made their choice. They are working against us. 51% of the statewide ISD is a minority majority school system. In 2011, $5.4 billion was taken out of the public school system. Pre-K education was wiped out at $200 million. 65% of the pre-K population statewide is Latino. Healthcare. The Republican position on healthcare in the state of Texas has gone from no to hell no. If you look at the 10 largest cities with the highest percentage of the uninsured, 8 of them are majority Latino. 9 is Houston, 10 is Dallas. We know the numbers. I mean, they are close, but they're not a majority. And so we recognize that from a policy perspective, we're not winning. The election booth, we're not winning. Even with the census, we're not winning. And so where do we go from here? So let's talk a little bit about political engagement. Stacey talked about the 2010 tsunami that impacted the country. Well, it certainly made its way in Texas. Texas Democrats were 2 seats away from taking back the House. It was a wonderful year, and then the elections came. And we went from a 76-74 chamber to a 101-49 chamber. Today we're 95-55. But Bill White lost to Rick Perry in the governor's race by 632,000 votes. There are 3.45 million Latinos in Texas that are registered and not voting or eligible and not registered. If 1/3 of that group were to get excited and to get upset and exercise their voice at the election booth, Texas changes. And when Texas changes, the Electoral College changes. And when Electoral College changes, presidential politics change for the next 50 years, bottom line. And so for folks, for smart people, for folks, the donor community, folks in the engagement community, folks in the strategy community, the idea is I would not give anybody the time of day who would come to the state of Texas that did not talk to me about how we engage the 3.45 million Latinos that are sitting on the sidelines. But to understand it is you have to understand their plight. You have to understand their circumstance. I mean, you are going to knock on the door of a voter who the government has cheated them at their every turn. They didn't get a pre-K education. If they got sick, they were on their own. They went to substandard schools. If they were going to college, financial aid is pretty much gone. It's a thing of the past. And so you knock on the door and say, I'm Trey Martinez Fischer, and I'm from the government. I'm here to help you. What do you think they're going to say? They're going to say, hey, I have rent due at the end of the month. I have child support to pay. My child is sick, and I don't have insurance. I mean, they're not going to care about what Trey Martinez Fischer has to say. And so we have to keep that in mind. We have to understand that perspective. And we also have to recognize that as progressives, Democrats, whatever you want to call us, I mean, there was a time when the Latino community was also, not well received within the Democratic Party. And so if you were over the age of 60 and you're not voting and someone knocks on your door, they remember the times, the 1960s and before. I mean, bear in mind, Texas became a covered jurisdiction under the Voting Rights Act in 1975. There weren't too many Republicans running things back then. And so, folks have a tendency to forget that. So I always remind people that if you want to turn Texas, you better work on your habla. And it's the day that the candidates look like the voters on the other side of the door when you start seeing things change. And I'm just as optimistic as everybody else about 14, 15, 16, 17, whatever year it is. I'm optimistic looking at demographic trends, but our candidates need to reflect our state. And if we're going to engage the folks who've been sitting out the longest. And in Texas, it's the Latino community. Thank you.
Been trying to win in building power, but what are we winning for? We're winning for the opportunity to enact policies. And so if we're not doing that, then we're just as bad as the other side.